Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm really excited to share with you one of my favorite people in the whole world, Ryan Adams, who is a vegan, plant-based weight loss coach. He's helped over 400 people lose up to their first 20 pounds on a plant-based diet, me included, about 4.5 years ago. And I'm really excited to share him with you today. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Tia. It's great to be here again, and hopefully we can give the folks at home some good info, some help today. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it feels good for me to be interviewing you versus you interviewing me. I feel like
It's
that's
weird.
usually
It's
how it goes.
wrong. Yeah, it's wrong. It's the wrong way around. But no, I'm
Feels
excited for it.
strange.
Yeah.
I feel very honored. What we're going to be doing today is last week over on Instagram, I asked you guys to share with me some questions that you have for Ryan, all about weight loss, fat loss, exercise, whatever that may be. And you guys sent a really good amount of questions, and we're just going to go right into those, Ryan, if you're okay with that. Or do you
Let's
have
do
anything
it.
you want to say to start off with, or are you ready to just kind of jump in?
No, I want your best, most challenging questions, stuff that will be really useful for people at home. And there's
Okay.
nothing you can't ask me, Tia. So let's do it.
Okay. The first question that I have, which I'm actually interested in your answer on this, is about exercise. So this person asks, is exercise really good first thing in the morning on an empty stomach? Is that like the best thing for fat loss? Or can I exercise whenever?
Yeah, I think the best time of exercise, this might be a cliche answer, the best time to exercise is the one that you'll actually stick to, is the one that will be sustainable. The data on this doesn't seem to lead to any precise conclusion. It doesn't look as though working out first thing in the morning is beneficial from a fat loss perspective versus 7 p.m. at night. There are some like indirect factors, like if you work out at 7 p.m. at night, maybe there's less time that you're likely to overeat after that spike of appetite from the exercise. But that's rather to do with calorie intake versus the weight loss being the workout being less effective because it's at night. Does that make sense? So it's kind of, the science is quite messy on it because there's so many different variables, but generally speaking, a workout is a workout. It burns the amount of calories that it does, regardless of what time of day it is. I think there's definitely an argument for preference, which time of day you should work out.
Yeah.
For me personally, if it's a weight training session, this is very anecdotal, but I've observed for me personally through trial and error that like 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. is the part of the day where I'm my strongest. But does that mean it's more effective for fat loss? Maybe, because my performance is better, but it's not as though because of the time on my watch that I suddenly burn more calories automatically during that workout, or it boosts my metabolic rate more than a workout at another time of day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I, like, for instance, I love to work out on an empty stomach in the morning right after I drop my kids off from school because that feels best for me to do it on an empty stomach. But now, what about the argument, or some would say, the intermittent fasters out there, that they like to work out while their body is still fasting because they burn more fat? What do you have to say about that?
That's it's a good question, but it's really complex because it depends on glycogen in the system from stored carbohydrate from the previous 24, 36 hours and so on. I think there's merit to this, and I think, but the crucial thing for people to understand is, and again, I hate to say something that's like, it's such a truth that it's very cliche, but the bottom line for fat loss every day is that you're in that calorie deficit, as you and I are always talking about on our respective channels. And so again, the time of workout and the amount of food you've got in your stomach at a given time doesn't really matter. There is an argument again about the amount of glycogen in your system and so on.
Yeah.
And then when a workout will start to use fat reserves. But this can happen again at any time of day based on a number of different variables. And I think by entertaining this question too much, it's a really good question, but I think the average dieter that just wants to lose some weight here, if they entertain this question too much, I think they might be guilty of making a bit of a mountain out of a molehill. Exercise regularly, get your diet right, do things based on preference, and that way it's going to be sustainable for you. So Tia, if you like to wake up and you like to work out first thing in the morning on an empty stomach because you feel light, you feel energetic, and you like getting out and getting it done first thing in the morning, maybe before the kids are up, for example, do that. But it won't magically have more of an effect on fat loss than if you did it at 7 p.m. at night. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think there's a misconception out there that no matter what you eat, right? You can wake up and on an empty stomach go right to burning fat. But at the end of the day, if you're still eating in a calorie surplus, right, you're not going to be burning fat. You're going to be gaining fat. So it really, I think people can get really caught up in that idea. And so it's best, like you say, to just do it when you're going to do it, when you're going to be the most successful at it.
Yeah, people get lost, and this is not just about this conversation about exercise, is it? But with health generally, people get lost in the minutia, and they try and master the real sort of advanced semantics, the very, very advanced things before they just eat consistently. Like they're eating loads of chocolate. Well, yeah, but, and then they're asking questions like, but isn't it good to work out first thing in the morning? And it's like, should we get rid of the chocolate first? And I don't want to sound patronizing or condescending to the person asking these questions that ask these questions, because they are really good. It is, one, it's confusing, and they are still good questions. I don't want to sound super dismissive, but in the grand scheme of what people need to actually get that scale moving down, to get fitter, it really doesn't matter what time of day you work out. It needs to be the one that fits in your schedule best. And overly worrying about, oh, but will I burn fat if I do my workouts late and therefore there's more energy in my system versus early? I really, really don't think it matters all that much. Your net calorie burn from the workout is going to be the same regardless. So do what works best for you.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great answer. Okay, next question is, I hear so much that we should be eating 30 grams or more of protein at every meal to get weight loss. Is that actually true? Because it seems difficult to do on a plant-based diet. That's what this person says.
I think there's two questions there. One question is, do you need to eat 30 grams of protein per meal to lose fat? And the second question is, how do you get enough protein on a plant-based diet? Or is that difficult to do on a plant-based diet? So they're kind of separate questions, I think. So maybe I'll answer them separately.
Yeah, it seems like this person's venting a little bit. They think it's hard to get that much protein on a plant-based diet. So yeah, probably.
And it's a super common misconception. I get it. So the first question of, do you need 30 grams of protein per meal? No, there's no magic number. Really, protein, like carbohydrates and fat, the big three macronutrients, some people class fiber as kind of this invisible fourth macronutrient, but let's say the big three macros, carbs, protein, and fat. It's really about getting an adequate amount based on your nutrition needs by the end of the day. I mean, there is science that suggests that meal timing and scheduling can be quite important. But for me, in the grand scheme of things, the bottom line is, are you eating the right amount of carbohydrates, protein, and fat for your nutritional requirements and your goals every single day? However that breaks down per meal, I don't think is as important as just getting the right amount every day anyway. In other words, if you started your day with oatmeal, I mean, there is a little bit of protein in oats and you could add your protein powder to it and whatnot. But if you start with oatmeal and just some berries maybe for breakfast, well, that's kind of quite a low protein meal, depending on what your standards and targets are for protein. But for many people, that is for the gym bros, that's going to be a very low protein meal. They might be worried about that. But if you then make it up with a 40 grams of protein lunch and a 50 grams of you have a tofu stir fried for dinner with some edamame beans and maybe a few cashews on top and some nutritional yeast, well, then you suddenly might be hitting 40 or 50 grams of protein for dinner. Really, for me, it's the bottom line, what you do at the end of every day. I think this is a different question from a muscle building perspective, where clearly protein might need to be more emphasized. There's also an argument that breastfeeders, well, not an argument, a very strong case that those women breastfeeding, women postpartum, protein should be a little bit higher. Anyone, maybe you're not muscle building, but you are particularly athletic, you've got lots of sporty ambitions, then you will need a higher protein diet. Even in that case, though, is there something magic about 30 grams per day? Are you leaving results, quote unquote, on the table if you're not having 30 grams of protein? Sorry, I said per day earlier, right? I meant
per meal.
You know what I meant, but I meant per meal. Is there some magic number about this 30 thing? Is there something magic about that number? Of course not. Of course not. No.
Yeah, and I think where this comes from is I've seen quite a few videos on TikTok and Instagram, or I should say Reels, about like that. It's been made to seem like that is a magic number at every meal. And I can see how that could be kind of confusing to people out there. So I'm actually glad this person asked this question. But yeah, for some reason, 30 grams seems
the magic
to be
number.
A magic number for weight loss.
It's exactly like 10K steps. As
Right.
if
Like
what you
that
do
was never
you do
proven. Right.
yeah, you do 9,500 steps and you're not going to lose weight. Like, no, it's not that binary. It's not that straightforward. I think most people know this, to be fair. Again, I don't want to sound patronizing. I think most people know this. And this is a common misconception, so I'm happy to talk about it. But another really important point on this is you don't metabolize and digest food instantly once you've eaten it. Right, that process can take a while, especially when you have a high fiber diet, to actually break things down and then get the nutrients into the bloodstream. That is not an instantaneous process. So if you're setting out thinking, I must eat 30 grams of protein per meal or more, it's not as though necessarily you're going to be absorbing that instantaneously anyway. So the argument that you need to kind of be drip fed protein at certain windows throughout the day to fuel muscle and tissue repair and growth, it's not quite that simple anyway. That the assumption there is that you use that protein immediately, or not immediately when you consume it, but it's on like a timed drip feed. But it's not like that, because different things and different food combinations will take different timelines to break down to metabolize differently in your system. Very wordy, but does that make sense?
Yeah, it
So
makes total
again,
sense.
it's more important what you're doing over the whole day. This process of digestion is not instantaneous. You want to get all the nutrients you need, and that's not just protein, which gets so emphasized. That's the same with fat and carbohydrate too. You want to get as much as you need of those things over the course of the day. And I wouldn't sweat the precise timing of it.
Yeah, perfect. Well, and then the next question kind of goes into this, the best sources of protein on a plant-based diet, which kind of was in that other question. Not really, but we talked about it. What is, in your opinion, what do you think your best sources of protein are that you eat on a daily basis?
Yeah, the sources of the plant foods that contain the highest amount of protein, which isn't necessarily the best sources, but let me answer the highest amount of protein. Certainly seitan is really high on this list, as you know. Tofu, tempeh, shelled edamame, young soybeans, TVP, lentils, black beans, particularly in the bean category. Black beans are pretty high in protein. You can get clean protein powders. Not a massive fan, but you can get clean protein powders. These are foods that contain a high amount of protein. This question of like what are the best sources, well, they all come with different nutrients as well. So for example, maybe tofu and tempeh, they're a little bit, as you note here, they're a little bit higher in fat. Are they the best sources of protein? Well, they contain a lot of protein. Does that mean they'll be the best sources of protein for you? Maybe not, because they contain a lot of fat as well. Do you know what I mean? So you might be better with something like TVP or seitan, which is a lot leaner source because it's high protein to low fat ratio. Does that make sense? So this idea of like what is the best source, that's kind of tricky to answer because it depends on the rest of your diet. But certainly seitan, TVP, tofu, tempeh, edamame, black beans, lentils, these have the highest amounts of protein for plant foods anyway.
Perfect. Okay. Now the next person wants to know, can sourdough be a part of weight loss? And I think they probably love sourdough bread, but I'm sure a lot of people out there just want to know if bread in general can be a part of weight loss.
Yeah, well, I'll do the sourdough thing first, and the short answer is yes, definitely. I would stick to whole wheat sourdough if you can, whether you're making it yourself. Sourdough is relatively easy to make as bread goes, actually, or by getting it store-bought. But whole wheat sourdough would always be my recommendation. But I'm pretty cool with sourdough, actually. It's a good source of prebiotics. Yeah, I like sourdough. Whole wheat or rye is usually kind of my go-to when I'm advising people, when people are asking me about healthy breads for weight loss. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest about this. This is not our advice, of course, but you could eat really junky, oily, artificial white flour bread, and you could still lose weight if you're in a calorie deficit at the end of every day. And so I don't want to keep, again, repeating this calorie deficit idea, but I think a lot of plant-based dieters are kind of missing this understanding.
Well, I'm glad you do repeat it, because I think you're right. I think not just plant-based dieters, I think people in general are so confused with all of the different conflicting information in there that at the end of the day, they're not realizing it is a calories thing. So yeah, you can have bread if you're in a calorie deficit.
If you're in a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
And there's lots of ways, as we know, you've tried, I've tried them, I've tried them all. There's lots of different ways to be in a calorie deficit. There's many ways to peel an orange, and that's where people are getting confused. But if we can just understand that the bottom line here is this is a calorie question, and then you can select the best
Way.
nutrition methodology for you. And for me, a plant-based diet is what's changed my life. That's the Slim and Sustain formula. It's a fiber-led plant-based diet where we use, my program, where we use fruits for that sweet tooth. We are balancing the macronutrients, so we have carbs, protein, and fat without trying to eliminate or fear one unnecessarily. We're focusing mostly on whole foods versus processed foods. This is my whole Slim and Sustain formula, and this is what has changed my life. And then that's obviously what I talk to my clients, but it started with me, like through a bit of trial and error. This is what changed my life. So many ways to be in a calorie deficit. I argue that a plant-based approach is by far and away the best, most sustainable, and healthiest way to do it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Next question is how to lose weight fast. Is it diet or exercise that actually accelerates it?
Good question. The determinant of the speed of your weight loss is the severity of, here we go again, your calorie deficit, right? So if you eat very low calories, or you do so much exercise that you burn loads of calories, and so your net calories for the day are really low, you're going to lose weight quickly. If you only have a very moderate or conservative calorie deficit, or you eat kind of normally and do a little bit of exercise to put you in that calorie deficit, your weight loss is going to be a lot slower. So that's the determining factor, if that makes sense. It's not really an exercise or a nutrition question. Better to think of them, the metaphor I always give for this is they're two levers that you can pull, right? Nutrition and exercise. There's a couple of others as well, like sleep and stress management and hydration and rest, but it's mainly nutrition, exercise. There are a couple of levers that you can pull to adjust how deeply you go into that calorie deficit. What I advise is, and it depends what the question asker means by fast weight loss, right? That's up for some debate. That's very subjective.
Yeah.
But my argument is weight loss shouldn't be so quick that it's aggressive, that you risk it being unsustainable, that you get stuck in that awful, we've both been there, restrict and binge pattern. So I'm all for slow and steady weight loss of kind of, for most people, between 1 and 2 pounds per week. Obviously, that's relative to your starting point, right? If somebody's only got 5 pounds to lose, they should not be expecting to lose 2 pounds per week, right? They should do it a little bit more slowly and conservatively.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. How much is too much vegan whole foods? Now, this was a little bit vague, and they want to know, obviously, for weight loss, but yeah, how much is too much?
Too much is going to be informed by two things, I would say. Number one, let me think about this. Number one, your results. And number two, how you feel. I think your results and how you feel will tell you if you're eating too much or too little. Results is pretty obvious. You'll see it on the scale. You'll see it in the mirror. If you're gaining weight from eating whole foods, it will become... Yeah, that's the way. It's obviously too much. That will become apparent in maybe, you won't be able to test that in like 3 days, right? Some people get on the scale, they're like, well, I'm a pound heavier than 3 days ago. And I'm like, no, that's not really enough data. That's not really enough time to actually test your particular plan or strategy. But let's say 1 to 2 weeks, if you notice that scale is starting to trend upwards, if you're looking in the mirror, and I know this can be kind of tricky and subjective because of lighting and our own judgments of ourselves, body image, this can be tricky, but if you're looking in the mirror and thinking, yeah, I think I might be gaining a little bit more, I'm holding a little bit more weight now all of a sudden versus a week or two ago, well, that's a sign that you're eating too much. So that's number one. It will be very evident in your results. So there's kind of like a trial and error thing to this. The second telltale sign that you're eating too much is very much how you feel. So signs that you're overeating might include you need to lie down pretty immediately after a meal. That might well be a sign that you've eaten too much. Like it takes you out. And it's important to rest after a meal. You don't want to get up and be active, especially if you've had kind of a voluminous, bulky, fiber-rich meal. You want it to digest before, you don't want to go and run a marathon right after lunch, right after one of your lovely chickpea pasta lunches, T. But you shouldn't be just conked out, lying on the settee, lying on the couch for like 2 hours after eating. That's a sign that you're overeating. Sluggish, you might be feeling lethargic. Of course, these symptoms could be many other issues, both diet and non-diet related. So this is not a prescription by any means, but these are a couple of telltale signs. Just trying to think, other signs that you might be overeating. Oh, you get really hot when you're eating a cool meal. If you're eating a meal that isn't actually that warm and you notice you need to strip off layers of clothing and you're sweating a little bit as you're eating, that's a sign that you're throwing too much food into your system. So I would say there's two things there. We know when we're eating too many whole foods by results on the scale, what we're seeing in the mirror, and then how we're feeling as we're actually eating food. And generally, just let me add one final thing if I can, T. The great thing about eating like a whole foods led approach, whether it's plant-based or another approach. I know where which my side is. I know where I plant my flag in the sand. But regardless, if you're eating generally a whole food led approach, because the calorie density of most whole foods is low compared to quite obviously processed foods, it means that the risk of overeating is way less. So that's the good news. But just because the risk of overeating is less with whole foods, that doesn't mean it's impossible. It's still very possible to do.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you talk about this, because would you mind sharing the signs of maybe undereating too? Because it is easy to undereat on a whole food plant-based diet. I get a lot of messages from people saying that they just feel like they're always hungry. They don't feel like they have as much energy. And this is typically in the beginning when they first start eating this way. But I think it would be beneficial to just talk about maybe some of the feelings and signs of undereating too.
Yeah, definitely. And just to add very quickly, I've had at least 15 to 20 people that have signed up with me over the last 5 years for my program who, when we've actually run the numbers, they don't know this, but when we've actually run the numbers of what their diet used to be like before signing up with me, they've been eating like 800 to 1,000 calories per day, which is absurd. That is absolutely, that's wild, isn't it? Right?
I'm starving just hearing that.
And they're wondering, why am I not losing weight? I'm eating this low calorie diet. Why am I not losing weight? Well, there's two problems there. One, they are eating a low calorie diet Monday to Friday, but then by the time the weekend comes, they are just like, give me calories now. And of course, when you want calories, you're attracted to the really rich, more calorific foods. That's biological. So inconsistency, but also then kind of this metabolic slowdown that will happen when you eat a very severe calorie deficit for a long time. Ironically, it can stop weight loss. So a lot of people thinking, well, my calories are really low. Why am I not losing weight? Well, they might be too low for too long. And this creates this is me putting it in kind of a simplistic kind of almost pseudo-scientific sounding way, but just so I can eliminate the sciencey jargon, creating let's say an environment in their body that really isn't effective for weight loss anymore, because hormonally the metabolic slowdown almost been punishing themselves with a super low calorie diet, and it's no longer effective like it used to be, because the body learns what you're doing as a metabolic adaptation. So sorry to finally answer your question, but I just wanted to validate, you said you see this a lot. I see this all the time, especially with newbies, because when you eat lots of plant foods, whole foods that have, like we said earlier, a very low calorie density, it's easy to undereat. Still overeat, but it's easy to undereat. So sorry, T. I'll finally.
Don't ever apologize, because the information you're giving is so valuable.
Good.
So
Good,
don't apologize.
So. Okay, thank you. Bless you. I hope so. Well, to get to your actual question, though, signs that you might be under-eating: irritability. That's the big one for me. I start getting cranky. That's when I know, oh, okay, right, it's time to eat something. If I get a little bit snappy and temperamental. Lethargy, fatigue, low energy levels, hunger pangs, like your stomach tells you, growling of the stomach, rapid weight loss, over a more long period of time, hair loss. This is something a lot of women report, is they do these crazy juice fasts. And I'm all for juicing, but a juice fast, entirely juicing, I don't know. These can be very extreme low calorie diets, or doing some kind of salad diet, or just an aggressive kind of, let's say, fad diet or weight loss trend, and they start noticing after a couple of months their hair falling out. Now, again, I want to be clear here. There's many potential health triggers for this symptom. There's many, causes of these symptoms, of the symptom of hair loss, that might go well beyond, your calorie intake. Yeah. So this is not 100% the case, but every single time, quite obviously. But again, these are all signs that you might be running a really aggressive calorie deficit. What's the word I'm looking for? Brittle nails, nails snapping easily and whatnot. Again, hair falling out. Yeah, these are signs that you're under eating.
I'd like to add one. I noticed when I first transitioned over, and then actually quite recently, now that I've been exercising a lot more, I will feel like I am coming down with the flu. And it is very specific. Like, I will feel like that. I get very run down, and sure enough, once I eat something, I feel back to my normal self. And so that's definitely a sign for me. It seems to kind of be the only one I recognize whenever I'm under eating, or I've burned off a meal, and I need to eat again. So I found that quite interesting.
And not to diagnose you on the spot, but let me just throw some mud at the wall here, and you tell me if this resonates. Push back if I'm wrong here. What I would suggest is you're not getting you're obviously not coming down with the flu. That's not what you're saying. But
No.
it's kind of, there are overlapping symptoms. So it's like, hey, am I getting a cold here? Am I getting a flu here? And it's probably, again, fatigue, lethargy, feeling a little bit sorry for yourself. And we want to be clear, there could be other causes of these things in your life. Obviously, if you're spinning lots of different plates and you're stressed, there might be other causes to these things. But this is, calories are energy. Calories are simply energy. They are fuel for life. And as much as it's my job to help people lose weight, I'm the first to say, you don't want to do it with an aggressively low calorie diet, because you're not going to perform well. It's not going to help with weight loss in the long term anyway. You might lose 10 pounds in the next 2 weeks, and that will feel amazing to you. And you get that little bit of feedback and you're like, yes, I'm onto something here, but let's talk in 3 weeks time. Yeah, you're very likely to gain it back, right? Yeah, the data on this is clear that people that do aggressive low-calorie diets are infinitely more likely to gain that weight back within 3 to 6 months, right? Not even a long amount of time to gain it all back. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for answering that. I think that was a pretty clear answer for whoever asked that. So this next question is how to position out the right amounts of food for portion. I think what they're just trying to ask is how to correctly portion control meals.
Yeah, so I have like kind of a basic template for this that is very generalistic. So this shouldn't be taken too literally. It will need some modification and adjustment. But I kind of like this idea of 1 cup of cooked grain, half a cup of beans or lentils or other legumes, 2 cups of veggies, and then a small fat source. And I think that's like a really nice plate of food. Now, like I said, I don't need to do this disclaimer all the time, but this is very generalist. That wouldn't be appropriate for me, right? I'm 5'11", I'm a man, I'm relatively active, and I'm not trying to lose weight anymore. So if I ate that meal, I'd be pretty hungry within an hour or two. But knowing my audience, knowing your audience relatively well at this stage, that's going to be quite a good template to start with for folks. And then based on, we just talked about hunger signals, right? And signs that you might be over or under eating and sort of trial and error, looking at the scale. With this feedback after a couple of weeks, people can kind of take the formula I've just given there and then maybe increase or decrease as they see fit, which is tricky again, because you might not know what to change in your diet. But I want to give people something to work with, and that's a formula that works well. But it's worth saying this is relative, right? And I get this question all the time on my channel. I'm sure you do. Like, what's a good serving of oats, Ryan? And I'm just like, it's really hard to it's really hard to come up with any answer other than it depends. I feel really boring because I just say it depends all the time. It's relative, but it's so true, and that's why I'm saying it. I'm not saying it for the fun of it or to try and be boring, but it does depend on your particular goals, your particular nutrition needs. The cliche that everybody different is pretty true. Everybody's different. That is pretty true, and so there will need to be some adjustment to that. But generally, that's a template for women, especially, that works quite well.
No, I think that's so great. If I could add, I feel like people want to know, and I just say this because of the questions I get and of the way I used to think. And we want to know that direct answer of what I need to eat and how much I need to eat. But quite honestly, what I've found is this really is, especially in the beginning, a trial and error thing. And we're always changing. We're always needing different amounts of stuff, and you just kind of have to feel it out and be patient with that. I find some people are lucky; they can move over to this way of eating and start losing weight quick based off of what someone says. But sometimes you have to figure it out, and that's okay, you know.
Amazing point. Really good point, because I wouldn't think to say that. So thank you, T. That's a really good point. Even for the folks that are that's what you're here for. Even for the folks that are lucky and they hit the ground running and start losing weight right away without actually being too conscious about, I need this amount of this and this amount. They kind of just do it with a bit of luck on a whim. They'll hit a plateau. And they'll be forced to do tweaking at some point. And sometimes that's when people give up, or they're like, oh, this is where my body, stops losing weight. I must just be really stubborn. It's like, probably not. Most people aren't, probably not. And so, not to talk too much about kind of precisely what my clients are doing right now, because that wasn't the question, but it's all well and good for my clients because I tell them exactly what and how much to eat, so they can just follow my formula. So they get a meal plan with various options every day that they can choose from, but everything is tailored to be in a certain macronutrient, fiber, and calorie ballpark. So it doesn't matter which sequence of meals they pick, they're going to have the right nutrients and calories come the end of every day. So they don't have to worry about it. But when I was just starting, prior to you meeting me, you know, we all had to kind of tweak and play with things and do, like you say, rightly, a bit of trial and error. That's part of this process. Weight loss, there are templates out there for us. Obviously, we've got a template that we promote and we teach, you know, our audiences here on YouTube and Instagram. But weight loss is also very, very anecdotal. You need to sit there and work out, okay, I'm going to try this for a week. Let's see what happens on the scale. And this isn't just food. This is also exercise. Let me see how my body responds. So-and-so on YouTube said that HIIT workouts were good for weight loss. Well, I need to actually test that for me. Not getting into that debate, but that's kind of the troubleshooting mindset that people need to have, I think.
No, I agree. Totally agree. And I think people don't have that mindset. Some do, but a lot don't. They just want the quick and easy, just tell me what to do. And a lot of times that's not the case.
They want to be spoon-fed, and we all do. Like when we, again, I don't want to sound patronizing here to people that are new to this stuff, because when I was new to this stuff, I'd love someone to just come and tell me like some really simple rules. But the truth about nutrition science is that it is actually really, really complex. So if there's any teacher or coach or doctor out there that's selling you some really simplistic, giving you some really simplistic advice, like, hey, just don't eat fat again and you'll lose weight, or just eat animal-based products. That's the new trend on Instagram I see all the time. Just eat, you know, the carnivore diet, just eat the ancestral diet, as they call it, and you'll lose weight. I'm always like, oh, it's too simplistic for nutrition science that is actually a little bit more complex and nuanced than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad we talked about that. Okay. Next question. This is very vague, but how to lower belly fat? I mean, I get where this person is coming from, right? Like I get it. But yeah, how to lower belly fat?
Yeah, so one of the biggest, you know where I'm going to go with this, one of the biggest misconceptions about weight loss is that you can spot reduce. You can pick apart your body and you can just target the fat there, or specifically target the fat there more than other places. And that sadly isn't true. So to lose belly fat, you have to lose belly fat. To lose belly fat.
To lose belly fat, you need to lose belly fat.
To lose belly fat, you need to lose belly fat. To lose belly fat, you need to lose fat everywhere. That's how this works. To lose fat everywhere, you need to be in a calorie deficit. And my method for being in a calorie deficit is this fiber-led, whole foods, plant-based approach. That's the one that's changed my life. That's what I help my clients implement. That's what, don't want to speak for Tia, but that's what's changed Tia's life and so on. So yeah, you need to lose fat everywhere to lose belly fat. Get yourself in a calorie deficit. How do you get yourself in a calorie deficit? Two ways. You either track to make sure you are. I don't like that approach. That drove me neurotic. I did it for 18 months to 2 years of my life. It drove me neurotic. It definitely did not help my relationship with food. So I was like, I need to find out a way to lose weight without tracking calories. And then I did that. My clients are fortunate, again, not to talk about them too much, but my clients are fortunate because they don't have to track their calories because I've done all the math for them. This said, calories still matter. So just because I didn't count calories, that doesn't mean I didn't respect them. I learned enough about calories from my gym bro days, as you note here, to know that when I went plant-based, I'm probably overdoing it here. I'm probably under eating here. No, this is a nice calorie sweet spot for me. I understood principles like calorie density. I understood how vegetables tended to have much lower calories per pound or gram than brown rice, for example. I understood that avocados, nuts and seeds, because they have a higher fat content, while albeit perfectly healthy foods, of course, a good source of nutrients, per gram, per ounce, per pound, they have a much higher calorie density than beans, than whole grains, certainly than fruits and vegetables, obviously. So a bit of understanding about calorie density, you can start putting together healthy meals, and then again, test. What does that scale show? Is that scale putting me at 1 to 2 pound per loss, 1 to 2 pound weight loss per week? If so, check, good. I can carry on, roughly speaking, with my current formula. The scale provides the feedback. Too many people are trying to watch YouTube videos and read books. And again, I've got a YouTube channel, so maybe this sounds really hypocritical. There's great advice out there. There is.
Yeah.
At some point, you just need to go and test and see what actually works. and what your body's responding to. And then when you get that feedback, you don't give up and just go and eat some chocolate cake. No, you make a tweak and you stick with this process, which is easy to do when you actually want it. We all get discouraged. We all get demotivated when we have a bad weigh-in. But if you really want this, if you really want to change your life, it's a no-brainer. Bit of tweaking, bit of troubleshooting. Stay away from the cookies. They're not the answer. You're only going to regret it 20 minutes later. Stay away from the chocolate cake. Stay away from the G&Ts. Just get back to your plan with a little tweak and then test that for a week. Rant over.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. And I think, you hit the nail on the head with sticking to it, because I think so many times people who specifically are trying to lose a part of fat on their body, they may start to lose weight, but when they're not seeing the change, let's say to their belly, they think, oh, this isn't working. It's not getting rid of my belly fat. But if you just stick with it, that will come off. That might be the last part of your body for it to come off. Like me, for instance, my upper body is the last part. It is my least favorite part of my body, but I have learned it's the last. And so I know when I start losing weight to just stick with it, keep doing what I'm doing. And at some point that's going to get smaller, right? So I think people just need to stick with it and stay consistent if it's working.
Yeah, and two comments very quickly, if I may. You know how I can ramble, T, so give me a second.
Ramble.
The first is people store different amounts of fat in different areas based on two things. There are others, but biological factors. Sex, number one. So women and men store fat differently, or store rather different amounts of fat in different places, not store fat differently. That's too vague. And number two is based on genetic predisposition. So even between men, for example, some people might store a little bit more fat around the arms. Common one for the men is the love handles, the lower back, in other words. For women, it's chest, it's the booty, it's the thighs, it's the quads, etc., etc. So yeah, men and women store fat differently, and then even as a layer deeper than that, different men store fat differently. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I think that's worth saying. And then the other thing I'll say is, on this question of like, I'm not seeing my belly fat go down. This definitely depends on how much weight you've got to lose. If you've got over 60 pounds to get in a healthy weight range, you're not going to see results necessarily on your physique. This is very kind of subjective, admittedly, but working with the amount of clients that I have over the years, sounds really arrogant. Yes, all those clients I've got, but just having interactions with clients like on a wide weight range. Like I work with some clients that are 120 pounds overweight to clients that only have 10 pounds to lose, if that makes sense. So speaking to that wide ranging amount of people, what I've noticed is clients that have the most amount of weight to lose do not see changes in their physique anywhere near as quickly as people that have just got a couple of pounds to lose. Yeah. So for me, not to sound seriously braggadocious, but like when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, the leanness between a week or two is very visible for me. It's very obvious. I can see, I've gone from a 4-pack to a 6-pack again. Oh, that's pretty cool. And I can just see that I've dialed down, and I've probably only lost a pound or two, but on a light frame, that makes a heck of a difference versus somebody that's 240 pounds. Does that make sense?
Totally sense. I'm actually experiencing that right now. I've done about a week and a half of really heavy, fun activity, but I only have about 12 pounds I'm trying to lose. So I can already see, I have people already telling me like, have you lost weight? And it's probably just a pound, like literally 1 pound. But versus when I started with you, I was 190, 95 pounds. It took a good 2 months before I really started to see any kind of change, really. So I think that's a good point that you bring that up, And
sometimes we're not even the best judge of our own progress anyway.
Yeah. No.
So, it's so interesting to get feedback from someone that you maybe haven't seen in 2 weeks. Hey, have you lost weight? You don't tend to get that when you're much higher because it's less of a percentage of your overall weight. So you're totally correct. Well done, by the way. It's going to be fun to watch you get over the finish line now. You've already done so well over the last couple of years. And this final push is cool to watch.
Yeah. Okay, we have one more question, and then I want you to talk about Slim and Sustain really quick. I know we've kind of touched on it, but I would love for you to just kind of explain, and I'll ask you too, but just really what it is. And then I'd love to know, like, what's next for you, what, anything you're planning this year or whatnot. But let's get to this last question. And I think this is a really good one. How do you navigate menus when you're eating out, basically? So how do you, deal with eating out and eating healthily?
Yeah, great question. So first thing to say here is that one meal every now and again will not ruin your weight loss results. And I'm not a fan of this kind of like cheat meal idea that's very much prevalent in the fitness to bodybuilding world. Because I don't think that's the right way to kind of frame things. Like, your regular diet is so terrible to you that when you break it, you're cheating. I just, maybe I'm overanalyzing. Maybe I'm taking it too literally, but
I don't think you are.
I don't like the framing of that. It's wrong to me from a relationship, a food perspective. But at the same time, indulging once in a while is not going to ruin all your progress. That's the first thing to say. If you eat one meal out per week and you have 20 other solid meals, that's not going to take you out of a calorie deficit, probably. So you're probably going to be okay. However, that said, when I do eat out, I try to make the best choice possible. I'm not perfect, but I try to make the best possible choice. Now, there's a couple of restaurants that for me are my go-tos if I want to try and eat a healthy meal whilst I'm eating out. So if I have control over where I'm eating, I'll pick one of these places. Sushi place, really good choice. Mediterranean food, a little bit oily, but lots of whole, clean foods friendly for vegans. Mexican food, again, there's cheese, there's sour cream, so you've got to make the right choices. But in terms of like our staples, like whole grains, rice, beans, etc., bit of avocado, burrito bowls, you can do things relatively well in most Mexican restaurants.
Yep.
Where else? Thai food, Vietnamese, like these South Asian cuisines, they use a lot of like canned coconut milks, a lot of fatty things. There's a lot of animal products in some of their foods, but you can find some very weight loss friendly plant-based meals in these restaurants as well, like pho bowls, and stews, noodle stews and soups and that sort of thing, maybe with a little bit of tofu, some edamame. Like, these are relatively clean options for eating out. I've also got this policy about the 4 S's. I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about this. I haven't said it for a little while online, but the 4 S's:
I think
soups, stews, salads, stir fries. There might be I've got to try and find a 5th. The 5 S's sounds even cooler, right? But the 4 S's:
you
soups,
forgot
stews,
no, I'm kidding.
snacks, yeah, Snickers, yeah, s'mores, yeah, that should be, yeah. But soups, stews, salad, stir fries, these are like really good things to look for on menus. Again, stir fries can be super oily and whatnot, but stir fries are amazing because they usually tend to have high vegetable content. So this is really topical actually, because I went out to eat yesterday with my friend. We went to a Thai place and I had this cashew stir fry, and there's a bit of oil in there, but the rest of it is really decent, and it kind of offsets those extra calories from the oil. I don't want to do that too often. I don't feel my best when I eat lots of oily, greasy food, but every now and again, that's fine, and I kind of get away with it. Again, might not be the right way to think about it, but I'm getting away with it, quote unquote, that extra oil and the bit of greasiness, because the rest of the stir fry, there's some cashew nuts in there, but there's carrots, there's bean sprouts, there's other, again, fiber-rich, low-calorie density foods that kind of bulk it out. There's a bit of tofu there, and I had a little bit of steamed brown rice on the side. That's a good tip as well. Ask for steamed food if you can, to avoid the oil in some places. So yeah, it's very, very doable. But if you do slip up, if you do go and grab a vegan burger, just know that that meal isn't going to ruin everything, and it is not your permission, therefore, to just go and eat a bunch of rubbish after that and start the slippery slope, the spiral.
I love that you say
Get
that.
back to it. Get back. You know about this. Get back to it from your next meal.
I love that you say that, because prior to coaching with you, that was my excuse, right? If I ate something I wasn't supposed to eat, that was it. I would self-sabotage the whole thing. And so you're right. Like, just because if you do happen to eat that vegan burger, like, it's okay. You're not going to ruin your progress, and you can keep moving forward after that. I do want to add too, because, I like to add things. I have started actually asking restaurants when I go if you cannot put the oil, right? Some places they can't help it, but I don't know if it was Dr. Esselstyn or someone. I feel like it was Dr. Esselstyn I saw years ago say that when he goes to restaurants, he tells them he's allergic to the oil. And so they do not put it in there. Now, I don't go that far, but there are many times I will ask if they can skip the oil, like at Mexican restaurants with veggie fajitas, and they will not put the oil. Now, I don't know if the oil's not hidden in something else, but it definitely helps out. So don't be afraid to ask, not you, but people in general, like, don't be afraid to ask if they could hold the oil,
Great point. And it extends beyond oil. And
Mhm.
I think, some countries are different for customer service. Like the US is incredible. Like
Oh, right.
your servers, they're so accommodating versus here.
Uh-huh.
Like here, you just get, oh, I'm not sure if we can do that really. But what I always say to people is that when you're talking to restaurant staff, charm and politeness, you don't have to be James Bond, but charm and politeness go a long, long way. Just be nice. And I've eaten out before with Clinton, who is Fruit Kid on Instagram. He makes some great content.
Yes.
Fruit Kid on Instagram. And he has, bless him, all kinds of hereditary allergies. Anything you can think of under the sun. So he has, he's in great shape, but he had to work out all of this stuff for himself. He never got any education on it. And he's done an amazing job. But when he goes out to eat, it can be pretty tricky for him. But he's lovely and he's humble about it and he's so respectful and he goes in with, hey, do you think you can help me out here? I kind of got to be mindful of this stuff. Do you think we could speak to the chef? Is there anything they could do? I don't want to bother you, but do you think we could speak to the chef? He has just such a great way of doing it. And so people can be accommodating. Here's the problem though, Tia, and you might know where I'm going to go with this. People get really worried about everyone else's judgment around the table.
Mhm.
Oh, you're not having meat with us. Oh, why are you asking for it without oil? What's wrong with you? Oh, you're fine as you are. You don't need to lose weight. And I think that peer pressure stops people from just having a nice word with the server.
Totally agree.
And if I think my advice for that situation is, ideally, number one, you shouldn't care. But let's be realistic about this. People do. We do care about our judgments, how we're being judged. Two, if that is the case, just go off quietly and speak to the server separately, or call the restaurant beforehand and just let them know if they just see if there's anything they can do, and then mention that quietly to the server when you have a chance that you called up before and you spoke to so and so and they said they might be able to help you out.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. That's really good. I forget not everyone lives here in the United States. So.
Yeah, your staff is so accommodating. Like customer service is another level in North America. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think those are all of our questions. Now tell us a little synopsis or a summary of Vegan, Slim, and Sustain, because it has changed quite a bit since I did it. I think I was like your first Vegan, Slim, and Sustain client.
So Slim and Sustain. Slim is the weight loss part. Sustain is the permanent habit building part. And that's what we try to do. And this is the principle that is baked through every kind of element of my program. And there's four main pillars. I'll go through them very quickly. Number one is the done for you plant-based meal plan, where I design a meal plan for my clients based on their particular nutrition needs, what will put them in that sensible calorie deficit that we talked about earlier on, using their favorite healthy plant-based foods. Number two is my whole philosophy on slow go cardio. I like to start my clients very slow. As you know, for the first month of my program, it's just walking only. And then we steadily build up with a little bit of resistance training, home workouts, just 10 or 15 minutes at the start. We do a little bit of interval running in month 3, which can be a bit of a challenge for people, but it's one that by the time it comes around, they've already started to build up their fitness. So I think it's kind of speaks for itself, but slow go cardio, right? The clue's in the name. We're trying to build people up slowly. You don't need HIIT workouts, boot camp classes. You don't need a gym membership. You don't need to do spin classes. Sustainable weight loss is actually about doing as little as possible and seeing how much you can lose you from that alone, because you're going to set yourself up with a system that you could actually realistically stick to, rather than racing out the blocks, doing, signing up for, Orange Theory, which they are great workouts, but doing that 5 times a week, doing a juice fast, so you're burning loads of calories, eating hardly any calories.
Sounds miserable to me.
It's miserable. I'm all about doing as little as possible to get that scale moving at first, and then we build our clients up in time as they hit plateaus and whatnot, but only when we need to. Third principle is my no BS accountability. I like to say that I'm firm but fair with people. I'm not the kind of super friendly, hey, my little sunshines coach. That's not really my style. I think I'm a polite person. I think I'm a nice guy. I'm British, right? Of course, we're all lovely and charming, but I can be pretty tough, as many of my audience will be giggling at home about, because they know, right, and my clients. So no BS accountability. I think a lot of people feel very isolated, very unsupported in their household or in their community eating this way. And to have someone that's truly on their team and in their corner, I think the accountability goes a long, long way for people. And finally, number 4, and this actually might be more important than anything else. This is, I think, one of the key cornerstones to the whole Slim and Sustain shtick, let's say. mental and emotional rewiring. And how many conversations did you and I have about emotional eating and about what was happening on the scale with fluctuations and menstrual cycles? Yeah, I'm trying to, and this is, there's only so much I can do in 12 or 24 weeks when I work with my clients. Those are the two options for my program. But I'm trying to help develop people's mindset and their habits and overcome their limiting beliefs and work on things like cravings and emotional eating, the emotional ties to food when we're stressed or bored, and change those established behavior patterns. So it's not just a weight loss program, because weight loss programs are great for weight loss. Yeah. But if you don't actually change with them, all you've done is lose some weight in a program that gave you a bit of motivation for a time. But again, slim and sustain.
I love that. I love what you just said.
I'm on a roll here, so let me just finish up.
Yeah.
I am. Again, I can't really say this without sounding super arrogant, but I'll just say it because I'm really proud of this and I'm happy to say it boldly. I'm so pleased with my rate of returns, right? I've had 450 clients through my program. You were like client number 1 or 2. I can't remember. You might have even been the first. And you've smashed it, obviously, and you're close to the finish line now. No, you have. You've smashed it. And so 450 clients. Over 60% lost 20 pounds or more in 12 weeks. Awesome. So I'm really happy with 60 as a percentage, 60. And it's not like the other 40% didn't lose any weight or anything like that. Like lots of them lost 15 pounds or 12 pounds or something like that. But you know what I'm more pleased with, T? It's the story I just posted on my Instagram today. I don't know if you've caught it, which is a lovely client of mine that had towards the back end of last year, Rose, who over 65 years old, absolutely smashed it out of the park, lost about 20 pounds with me in 12 weeks on my program. She's lost another couple of pounds since. She's got 5 more pounds to go. And she was just updating me. She hasn't been on my program. She hasn't worked with me for 6 weeks, but she's still getting results after the program. I am so pleased about what happens to my clients after the program. And I think it's because, number one, they're ambitious, dedicated people. I can't take too much credit. But also, number two, we put so much emphasis in our conversations, in the extra training resources in my program on, building permanent habits, cravings, dealing with emotional eating, et cetera, et cetera. So it turned into like a pitch. I didn't mean it to be, but I'm just super passionate about this program. And I want to get to.
I wanted you to kind of do a pitch. I didn't want you to do a pitch, but I just wanted you to tell us. And I think you did a really good job. And I can honestly say, like, you and your program has changed my life. And for me, and I've talked about this so many times, but the work that you do with your clients on the mental and emotional side is tremendous. Because in our day and age, right, the foods that we eat out there are so addicting. It's so hard to not hear them calling your name, right? Like, it's really hard. Mm-hmm. And you do such a great job with everything, I think. And so, I'm glad you talk so much about that part, because I think it's important. But I will put a link and all of the info about Slim and Sustain down below in the description. Now, people can find you on YouTube. It's Get Fit with Ryan Adams or Fit with Ryan Adams.
It's there, actually. Fit with Ryan Adams. Just type that in on YouTube. Yeah.
And then I'll have that below. And then Instagram, Ryan Adams.
Instagram. I should have them the same for congruency, shouldn't I? But yeah, Instagram, it's at Ryan Adams UK. Ryan Adams UK.
Yeah, and I'll put all of that information below. But it's been such a fun time. I mean, I've had a blast, but it's been a pleasure. And I feel like this is such good information that is free to people. And so I just really appreciate your time and you being here, Ryan.
Well, thanks for putting up with my ranting. I know I go on and on spieling, but hopefully it was all useful. And thanks for having me, and thanks to everyone at home for tuning in.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Take care.